Hello everyone. It's 5:30 on Friday the 3rd of July, which means we are going to be going live with Kate Nelson, also known as Plastic Free Mermaid. So this is a chance to get involved with the Plastic Free July initiative and learn all about the great work of this incredible activist and actionist that we know as Kate, and we also know as a plastic free mermaid. So, really looking forward to the conversation. Oh, and there you are. How are you, darling?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I guess,
Yay!
unlike everyone else who's participating in Plastic Free July, your first few days are probably just like any other 3 days of the month.
You are correct. It's just same old for me.
I'm really glad you're able to join us today, Kate, and hopefully share some hints and tips and insights for people out there who are really trying to understand what it is actually like to try and live single-use plastic free, and really importantly, I suppose, understand why it is so important that we actually try to reduce our single-use plastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's so great to chat with you about this amazing topic that has captivated our lives for years.
Yeah, maybe that's a good place to start with this conversation, Kate. Might actually just do a first little acknowledgement that I'm tuning in from Camaragal country in Sydney, and certainly paying my respects to elders past, present, and emerging as we settle in for this little fireside chat on a Friday afternoon. And you're up in Byron Bay, I assume. But yeah, would love to kind of go right back to the origins of our friendship and relationship on this plastic pollution fighting journey. What are your recollections of our first meetings?
We met at a picnic table in Newcastle, overlooking a beach, and we were discussing. I think it was like 2011, maybe.
That
And
sounds
we were
about right.
discussing plastics and what we were going to do. And I was sharing my policy work in California on working on bag bans and just trying to get a feel for what the deal was with plastic pollution in Australia and what the kind of culture was around plastic pollution and if people were aware and yeah, what you were kind of just feeling out the scene here in Australia and what the awareness level was like here.
So, what had brought you to Newcastle in the first place? I was there working for another non-profit called Conservation Volunteers Australia, and I guess by 2011, Take Three for the Sea would have been a couple of years into its early journey. But what brought you to Newcastle?
I was there to surf. I was there surfing and teaching yoga. I just came to Australia because it is an incredible place to adventure in the ocean.
Right. Okay. And so it obviously from that moment hooked you because you're still here 9 years on.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely love the place.
Tell us a little bit about obviously people picking up on your accent and your origin. So where are you from, and why did you choose this sort of mermaid lifestyle and this environmentalist lifestyle?
I think they usually say the mermaid life chose me. Is that right? I didn't really choose it. The ocean got me. I grew up in Minnesota in the US. So that's at the very top of the country uh, where the Great Lakes pour from Canada into the US. So it's really beautiful. It's known as the land of 10,000 lakes, but really it's more like 100,000. It's a really puddly forested state. And then from Minnesota, it kind of spreads out and becomes farmland in that area. But Minnesota, it's really beautiful. So I spent my youth growing up, canoeing and camping the boundary waters, so the big lakes between Canada and the US, and just developing a really beautiful relationship with nature. I also went out to California and would do junior lifeguarding in the summers. So yeah, just again, once I saw the ocean, it was just the incredible um, the vastness of it. I mean, you see that same, never ending horizon or just this incredible body of water with the Great Lakes. But then underneath the surface of the ocean, the marine ecosystem was just mind blowing for me. So yeah, I just fell in love at a young age. And then I studied philosophy and business economics at college out west at UC Santa Barbara, and was just kind of exploring ethics. Like, why do we make decisions like we do, and do we even have ethics in our culture or society as we know it? So yeah, so it brought me out to the West Coast and to the ocean.
So I love that. You sort of you grew up and the Great Lakes were the great bodies of water that captivated your mind and your attention, but then you saw the Pacific Ocean and everything kind of changed. The greatest lake of all was before you.
That's right. Full of
And
mystical beings and creatures.
exactly, all those mermaids. So how did you then start to meet others that had this passion for conserving the ocean, and what were some of your first forays into activism and actionism?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up volunteering, so we always did a lot of service work in my family. So in college, I did a lot of service work and volunteered a lot, and all of my, the service work that I was choosing was all environmental. So when I was in Minnesota, it was conserving lakes and forests, and then when I was in California, it moved to naturally the ocean. And so I was working for Jean-Michel Cousteau's Ocean Future Society in Santa Barbara. And that's where I learned about from the scientist there, Dr. Andrea Neal. She was studying microorganisms ingesting microplastics. And so this was probably like 11 or 12 years ago. And I just was like, come again? What do you mean by that? So that was my first exposure to plastics. And I'd always been quite, active. In high school, I led a protest because we weren't allowed to wear pants under our uniform because during winter it was outrageous. And so I led a protest in high school, and in college I was not shy to get involved in the activism. I felt like it was a great way to exercise our freedom of speech and also kind of empower ourselves to stand up for what we believe in, and also educate each other, educate ourselves about the issues that we're kind of attaching to as part of our identity, say, or that we, just felt were important to us. It gave us more reason to go deeper into the research and better understand the issue, and importantly, the solutions. So I was pretty active in high school and college, and then in my volunteering for the ocean nonprofit in Santa Barbara. When I learned about plastics, I was like, oh man, had to take action on that one.
And so you found some fellow mermaids, and tell us about what some of your first steps there were to start tackling plastic at a policy level and education level.
So I guess being in the water a lot, I surf and sail and free dive, and we were stand-up paddleboarding a lot. My girlfriend's in California, so when I learned about plastic and I told my friends, they were all just as outraged as I was, as all of us are when we learn about plastic that doesn't biodegrade. So we decided to form a nonprofit called Save the Mermaids, and so we would dress up like mermaids and go to city council and bring all of the science from Dr. Andrea Neal, and that Captain Charles Moore was finding, and that the Plastic Soup Foundation were finding. Like, all these amazing organizations were coming up with all this research, and so we were presenting it to our local government dressed as mermaids, and it was hilarious. It was so much fun because they were having these kind of boring council meetings that were just dragging on, and then we'd show up sparkly in seashells and say, hi, we're mermaids, we came from the ocean, and we just wanted to bring up this issue of plastic pollution. And they were like, oh, okay, let's hear from the mermaids, sure. That was so funny. And then we had all of this scientific evidence to kind of back these claims that we were pushing for. We were like, so would you mind considering banning plastic bags because they're a real issue? So we had a lot of fun with it. It was great.
I love that. It reminds me of like Doshi, the gnarly beach cleaner in
Yeah.
California, and his whole philosophy of making it fun, right? Activism is a pretty serious game, and there's a lot of beatdown. So I love that from a very early stage in your journey, you realized you had to make it fun. This had to be something people wanted to be a part of.
That's right. Well, that was kind of the hard part about the environmental movement. I wanted to be a part of it, but at every corner they were pushing a petition or begging for, outside of the grocery stores, asking for a donation, or showing these kind of depressing images. And I was noticing the reaction of people, and it wasn't positive or engaged or inspired, or and then when you dress up like Mermaid and you kind of get people laughing and giggling and soft, or open, they're just so much more willing to discuss these sort of hard issues that they weren't 5 minutes ago, or that they maybe just don't have the energy for, the time for, the budget for, if it's council. But if you're like, we're fun, we're gonna, everyone wants to laugh, everyone wants to play. So yeah, when you can initiate that in your activism, if you can engage, or I try to lead by example, and with grace and integrity, as opposed to forcing or leading with fear, which are also effective tactics in activism. There's a place for that, but yeah, I found it more sustainable for myself to have fun with it.
That's right. And I'm a big proponent of this diversity in activism. There's no one size fits all. We need a lot of different approaches to sort of edge towards the ultimate end goal. But let's like sort of fast forward, right? 10, 11, 12 years on, and you're still advocating for action on plastic. It doesn't feel like we've really, aside from winning perhaps the hearts and minds of the masses, it's mainstream now, but we don't really have any evidence that we've made a tangible improvement to the pollution affecting the ocean or affecting us. So, yeah, how are you going in 2020 with the big picture goals of your activism?
Yeah, I'm an optimist, and that's what gets me through it. That's why I'm still here fighting the fight. And I think that capturing the hearts and minds is a massive milestone. I think that is a huge thing. That I celebrate. Cheers to us. I think that the awareness around plastics is so important. I think there's a few stages to the plastics awakening. First, you're like, oh, it's a problem. Like, we need to clean the beaches, and then we realize, oh, I'm the problem. It's how we use plastic that's the problem. And then we kind of have this reckoning where we're like, oh shoot, like how do I even begin? It's so ubiquitous. And then there's the further awakenings of how it's actually impacting our endocrine systems and whatever, on and on. But so I think that just having that tip of the iceberg of the awareness around plastics is a massive achievement that I'm so proud of all of us who've been working on this for so long. Where I'm going to go with it, I feel grateful to be able to transition a little bit from just like awareness, like, you guys, listen, there's plastic, we need to like stop using it, to transition to the solutions. I have a book right here, how, making things that are at home instead, or just simplifying. Like, we don't need to rely so much on so much stuff, on so much packaged stuff. So influencing individual change so that we can then influence systemic change is where I have a lot of fun. I think that it's really empowering to work with people on that. Also supporting the businesses that are working towards the solutions as well. Some of the refill, reuse, repurpose, circular business models that are mostly coming from local small businesses. So working to support those businesses is really important to me, as well as the science, like the research and innovation around bioplastics. I tend to avoid really endorsing them because single use is still single use. Like, I'm not saying go use the bioplastic cups, but it's interesting to watch what is being made around with seaweed and with hemp. So yeah, that's where my interest lies, is to see what sorts of things are going to replace plastic and how quickly can they biodegrade, and how can we close these loops on these materials that we're using. What can we influence in our society? What different behaviors, and just change some of this behavior around single use. Yeah, so I'm just excited to see what comes. Like, now that there's so many awakened minds to plastic, there are so many incredible projects, so much innovation, so many minds that are working on this problem. So it's a really cool time.
Yeah, we're in the age of solutions well and truly now. Let's talk a
Mhm.
bit about the book, your new book, how long it's been out, and what it's about. I know my copy's in the post, so I can't wait to dig into it. But give us the rundown on your new book.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So I wrote a book. It's called High Quit,
Woohoo!
and you can too. um, yeah, it's really beautiful. I'm so proud of it. Pantera Press out of Sydney helped me put this together, and it's got lots of pictures. Um, and yeah, we just launched it in the US yesterday. So it's a freshie. Get your hands on it. And yeah, it's basically it's a little bit about what we've been talking about, ethics and how you kind of set an ethical boundary against something like plastic, and then how you sustain that, and what kind of self-care rituals have in place so that you're resilient and you just don't fold at the first bag of chips that someone offers you, and really tuning into your why, your intention for wanting to make a change, like quitting plastics or going vegan, or any of these sorts of um, ethical choices that we choose to make that influence our life and our identity. So I explore a lot of that, and then also plastic pollution and how it impacts human health in a really scary way. The estrogen, how it acts like estrogen in our bodies and causes us to gain weight and get depressed and even be infertile. So I touch on that, and then some practical theory on how to quit plastics. It's a guide. It's an intro guide. It's not hard at all. It's like really basic stuff. Teach you. The feedback I'm getting is that people find it helpful. It's not, quitting plastics. It seems daunting because it's everywhere. But I've done the hard work. I'm 10 years off the stuff, so I've put it all into a guide, and yeah, I'm really proud of it. There's lots of recipes. There's different sections for bath products and beauty products and cleaning products, and then staple food recipes. So it's pretty, covers a lot.
I'm really proud of you too, Kate. I can only imagine the huge amount of work that went into it and what that sense of satisfaction must be for you right now. So, yeah, what sort of feedback are you getting? Well, obviously, you've been sharing lots of hints and tips and recipes via social media and your website for a while. But, yeah, what's the feedback so far, and what are people really picking up as the easiest things that they didn't think they could possibly do without single use plastic, that now they can because of your work?
Yeah, and thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that the feedback is just, I'm a philosophy major, so I go deep a lot, and Instagram has pretty limited caption space, so it's hard to kind of complete thoughts a lot of the time, or rants more. So yeah, it was a beautiful opportunity to share a bit of my own philosophy and how I live my life, and so I've been getting a lot of really beautiful feedback on that, um, that it's inspiring people to that this idea of quitting plastics, which once felt quite unattainable, or like on this pedestal as if it was just impossible to achieve, or they had to do a lot before they quit plastics. They had to prepare themselves, or um, be a certain level of environmentalist before they could even take on the challenge. That this book helps people kind of soften that mental, I guess, barrier towards quitting plastics, and just yeah, allows them to make it just feels more accessible. Like, it just feels easy, it feels simple, and that's what it is. Plastic is actually a barrier to living how we used to live. It's kind of gotten in the way. It's complicated things. I always think of it as it's not actually doing much. It's just advertising space for the marketer, the producer, the manufacturer. They are able to say sugar free or gluten free or all these different claims that then trigger the different things that we identify with. So if we're like, I'm trying to eat gluten free, and we see it on a package, we're easier to market to. So it just makes us more sheep like. So I find this, and I talk about this in the book, I find this whole quitting of plastics, it's more about just reconnecting to our agency. It's becoming sovereign beings again. It's not just buying everything from one gigantic superstore that's all packaged in plastic, and then putting it in plastic bags and bringing it home and having a huge trash can full of plastic packaging. But instead, it's being sovereign again. You go into a store, you're like, I can't buy most of the stuff in here. What am I going to do? I have to think for myself again. I have to create something. Okay, I need milk, or I need water. What am I going to do? Okay, I need to find a water source. Do I need to carry it? Oh, that's some good exercise. So it's connecting back to the things that we need in our life and what we really need. And the whole process is so beautiful because we should be connected to where our water comes from. We should be connected to where our food comes from. It shouldn't be shipped in from all over the planet and, packaged in these plastic packages that we just throw away. When we connect back to where these things come from, we have a more enriched, fulfilled lifestyle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. And so it's easy to project and to romanticize what the world could look like as people adopt those behaviors in droves. And I think that's on its way, right? People are reconnecting with localization, and there's this real sort of feeling and sentiment about slowing down. So we can certainly project the growth in that space. But then the other side is, right, we live in a world that is dominated by giant industries, and the greatest and the most powerful of those are the petroleum industries who've been mining carbon from our earth for a long time now, and have projections to keep doing that. So where does, I suppose, the romanticism about what a relocalization look like compared to the other side of the coin, which is that these giant industries want to have decades and probably centuries of sustenance ahead of them? Like, where do you forecast them meeting in the middle, and what is some of that little journey going to look like, do you think?
Yeah, I know it can feel really overwhelming, and there is that sort of paralysis in the kind of awareness of the activists awakening journey, is when we get kind of paralyzed with all of the things, all of the issues impacting the planet, and oh my gosh, it's too much, and then you just go on with life as usual, or you stay and you fight and you work on it. I think that we're fortunate. Because the youth are coming. And I don't mean like the youth are saving us all, but that they have such a connection to the environment. And the people who are currently in charge, and I'm careful, we have, you're right, even the bailouts in this country are fossil fuel focused. The recovery from COVID are fossil fuel focused. It's what Australia knows. It's what the economy is built on. It's what the wealth of this country is built on. So I understand that it feels comfortable. I think that, and I sometimes get slack because I focus on individual change. I focus on behavior change. I'm like, I quit plastics. You can too. Look at the impact one person can make. And people are like, no. I'm not going to worry about using a single or a reusable water bottle. We need to think about systems change up here. But my opinion, and in my experience, and this is the grassroots activist in my heart, is that we can't get to systems change unless we chip away and we create that ripple effect, because it's individuals at the top making these decisions. It's individuals that are CEOs of these fossil fuel corporations. It's individuals that are the policymakers, who we've met with over and over and countless, and we're wearing them down. And it's only through these individual changes and through these sort of awakening, like we talked about at the beginning of our chat. Okay, yay, we got awareness. People are aware that plastic is a problem. We see all these straw bans. Yeah, it's low hanging fruit. And initially I was like, damn it, straw bans. Like, come on, we need more, like stronger legislation. But at least we have straw bans. Like, that's the precedent now. We have plastic ban precedent that we can build on. And we have setbacks like the masks, the COVID hygienic, mandatory hygiene for all these protective plastic. However, there's always going to be setbacks. And yes, there's incredible investment in fossil fuels as well. So we continue as leaders in this field to inspire and to lead by example and to bring hope, because there are so many more minds working on this problem now. And when we see other people working on this, lift them up. So supporting each other. Especially that's what we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement. Like, my God, this is so important that we lift up the communities of color, that the Black, the Indigenous, the peoples of color get lifted up and supported, so that they have to stop worrying about surviving and they can join the causes that they care about. It's such an incredible time that we're at right now, because we have the opportunity we have this global pause. We can't travel, we can't kind of go on with life as usual. So we're forced to kind of look at what our approach to life is, and what really matters to us, and what our values are, and who we love, and what we care about. And we can either put energy into worrying about what's going on behind the scenes with our politicians and with our government, or we can take action, and we can channel that frustration and that anger or that rage or whatever these emotions are, and channel it towards positive action. And sometimes, because we don't want to overwhelm people to inaction, sometimes the best thing we can do is just start with ourselves, and just make changes ourselves, and work on ourselves, and get composting, and start growing some food, and support our local businesses, our local farmers market, and try to shop with less plastics, and try to make some of our own products. Just doing things, taking this on ourselves, and if we can't, support others who are doing it. And then we're a part of a community that's making change. And we can identify more opportunities to give energy, or donate, or put energy towards things that need it.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important that environmentalists and identities like you are the glass half full optimists, and are happy to see that the incremental, slow approach is perhaps the only approach, where other people who perhaps can't grasp that are forced into that state of paralysis of like, but if plastic's a problem, stop making plastic, and not really, I guess, understanding the protracted ask to unwind this fossil fuel based economy that Australia has unfortunately built for itself will now need to be deconstructed, bit by bit to reach the end goal.
And justly, because the people that work in the fossil fuel, like they have families, they're people too, so it's a just transition. And you're right, I think we're kind of caught up in this pace of go faster, faster, faster. And that's one beautiful thing about slowing down and simplifying, and this sort of like regenerative lifestyle, where you wait for the seasons, and you wait for the rain. And it's that slowing down that's more natural. It's more in alignment with nature. And so you're right. It's hard, especially when the clock is ticking on things like the planet warming up. And the communities and the islands that are going underwater, like these are real natural disasters affecting people. So I feel that sense of urgency. And, we all can do our best. So we just keep doing our best, each of us. And that's how we look ourselves in the mirror.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, because on one hand, we're speaking to your incredible work in mobilizing and inspiring individuals in this sort of local action against a global problem, but you have gone and partaken in some pretty significant global projects. I wanted to get you a little bit talking about, Break Free from Plastic and some of the experiences you had over there, and also the health and plastics in health summit that you went to recently as well. I wonder if you wouldn't mind talking to those two major projects that you've been involved with.
Yeah, sure. So let's see, I guess it was 2 years now. 2 years ago, I went so Break Free from Plastic is an incredible alliance of organizations that are all working on the plastics problem, working to change the narrative on plastics, so how people think and talk and live around plastics, as well as target the main sources of plastic pollution, which aren't countries like Indonesia or Thailand, but actually corporations like Coca-Cola and Unilever, as well as supporting the global south, or where we kind of ship all of our trash from the global north. A lot of these countries in Southeast Asia, for example, supporting them with these programs called Zero Waste Cities, which are helping them transition to dealing with their waste on a really local level or scale. So yeah, it's an amazing alliance of organizations, and I'm just kind of a random mermaid in there that loves to support them, and amplify the causes and the campaigns that they're working on, because they're close to my heart and really doing amazing work. And Greenpeace is a part of this alliance, and so they brought me over to Amsterdam for a really cool project working with their plastic Monster campaign, which was about targeting some of those corporations, which was super fun. And then I went to the Plastic Health Summit as well. So, but I'll back up. So the Break Free from Plastic kind of crew was working on a documentary that was produced by Steve Wilson, and it's called Story of Plastic. Everyone should check it out. It's really great. And we went to Indonesia and the Philippines on kind of a mission to get more footage about where the plastic was being sent. So where are these places? Where is a way? Like, and so we went to some really remote islands in Indonesia, in Java. And it was heartbreaking to see, I focus on like shop at the bulk food store and make your own deodorant, which is great and important, but there's nothing that really activates that sense of the global issue of plastic pollution, like when you're standing in a remote island in Indonesia and you're sifting through piles of trash in this beautiful jungle village that have just piled up, and you have to walk through these piles of trash to get anywhere. And the trash is from the US. It's like Trader Joe's bags or from Australia, like these packages of food that you can't get from anywhere else except for Australia. And the people that are sorting it are these people that are Indonesian. They don't even speak English, and they probably haven't left that island and maybe never will. And yet they're sorting through our trash. So that's when it really puts it into perspective around how wasteful we are, and how important it is to really take responsibility for everything we use and everything that we throw away, and instead of closing that loop and trying to reuse it and repurpose it. So it was really eye-opening for me. It was really humbling. I think that I'm loud. The system works for me. I have a voice, and I try to use it for good. I try to inspire change, and I also need to do so much more. So that was really eye-opening for me in terms of who is really affected by our trash. It's not just the whales and the dolphins. It's these entire countries where we're shipping all of our trash.
And
So yeah,
people, right? And people.
People, villages, children, they're running and sorting through trash, sorting through our trash, these children. And as we know about the unfortunate toxicity of plastic, it's not safe for them to play with that plastic. It leads to lasting, disease. So that was heartbreaking. And yeah, I have a lot of those highlights on my Instagram page if anybody is listening and wants to check those out. It's hard to watch, but it's important, again, educating ourselves about where our trash really ends up. And when there's not a clear answer, it's like, okay, well, maybe I need to rethink what I'm using. So yes, that was an amazing adventure to go over to Indonesia and just see how they're dealing with the trash as well, like what waste systems they're creating to process the plastic over there. Like they can't just let it pile up, they've started sorting it. And in this particular place we visited with my friend Priggy, who has a nonprofit called Ecoton. So if you want to support him, you should. It's ECOTON. And so he took us on this amazing tour where we saw these people chopping up plastic packages of margarine. So they'd sorted out so much plastic waste, and then they'd had this big pile of margarine packets, and they were cleaning it. They were right next to a river, and there was a pipe that was pouring water from the river, and it was cleaning the margarine packets, and then they were routing that water back to the river, and then they were chopping up these margarine packets and then stuffing this shred, the plastic shred, into this bag, and then that was being sold, hopefully, on the global waste market or something. It was, they wouldn't tell us. It was all very secretive because it was kind of owned by the mafia, run by the mafia there. And the river next to it that was rerouting the water was just sludge. And the village, this jungle, where we were in the middle of the jungle there, it was just covered in these plastic, brightly colored flecks. And I've never seen anything like it. It was so surreal because it smelled synthetic. Like you could smell the plastic. And it was just in this rainbow jungle, like it looks like Candyland or something. And this river was just white sludge because they'd been cleaning toothpaste and all sorts of different plastic packages. Yeah, so to see the plastics issue that intimately, and what people are actually having to do to sort through our trash was motivating. I mean, it was sad and hard, and then you transform or compost those emotions into something useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of well understood that to engage people in acknowledging this problem, take them to do a beach cleanup or take them to a waste recovery facility and they can actually see the scale of the problem. But I mean, going to the ultimate destination of a way where the ultimate failures of this globalized approach to waste are realized is just such a profound thing. And so for you to be able to go and share that back with so many people via your communications channels is critically important. Yeah, what about the health stuff? I mean, this is, I guess, the summit we were talking about in Amsterdam was the first of its kind, and I've certainly been, waiting with bated breath for the most compelling evidence to come out linking, toxic plastic materials and our applications and uses of it back to human health. Very hard to kind of create that direct correlation that can really become the headline of the New York Times, but you went and heard from some of the best, and what was that like?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It was amazing. It was so exciting. I was so honored to be there reporting at that summit. It was, yeah, I mean, it was put on by the Plastic Soup Foundation, which Maria, the founder, is such an incredible woman. She learned about plastics, about a decade ago. And Captain Charles Moore actually told her, he was like, go to Europe, tell them, spread the message. And she's done a phenomenal job of really creating awareness in Europe, especially in Holland. So yeah, it was in Amsterdam. And the first half of the summit was about microplastics, and the second half was about the leaching toxins and the estrogen mimicking characteristics of plastic. So the first half, microplastics, it was amazing. I mean, it was horrible, but it was amazing to have research, as you say, to be able to point to. One of the amazing things that Plastic Soup Foundation did was that they raised millions of dollars to be able to fund the science, which is so important. It's so easy to buy science these days from corporations that kind of contradict these independent studies. So
A
it's
vested
really
interest in a certain outcome.
right, exactly. So it was so great that we were able to get funding for a lot of this plastic science in the first place. And then this was a summit where the scientists had the opportunity to present what they'd found, and they only had about a 6-month window. So they were really working hard, and a lot of them had some really great things to share, and they'll have more to share later this year as well, which is super exciting. But yeah, so last year I went, and the first half was about microplastics. I mean, one of the biggest takeaways is that it's just everywhere. The more you use plastic, the more plastic, like it's in your carpets or your curtains or your clothing, or you're in a supermarket full of plastic packaging, or in a clothing store that's made, with synthetic clothing, and you're wiggling the clothing rack. It's all shedding these little microplastics. And so we're constantly in a cloud of microplastics at all times. And then we ingest those microplastics and they lodge in our lungs. So it's just at a scale that we can't see with the naked eye. And so to have this research coming out, which is all available online through the Plastic Health Summit and the Plastic Health Foundation, yeah, it's exciting to be able to point to that evidence and say, no, this is important. Like, you can't use plastic to package everything. It's hurting us. It's impacting the next generation. It's impacting our ability to reproduce. So the first half was about the microplastics, which was great. And all these presentations were actually filmed, and you can watch them online. So
Do
that's
you
great.
believe? I mean, I've always sort of felt like, we're up against it with the images of the environmental and wildlife implications of our plastic addiction. But when it comes to the story of what it's doing to us and to our children, and there is this just cascading, amplifying effect of these insights and this science, this data coming out, that it'll be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I mean, do you believe that? Do you think it's where it's going to head?
Yeah, I mean, I get so many. I have this conversation a lot, you know, like where do we put our energy? Do we focus on renewables? Do we focus on reducing plastic? Where do we put our energy? And yeah, I can't predict the future. I don't know what it's going to be. I think we're exposed to so many toxins. I think we're exposed to you know, so much different kinds of pollution that we probably aren't even aware of. But what I think is so mind-blowing is that the sheer volume of plastic that we're exposed to, because it's kind of penetrated every single industry, you know, like we're exposed to it in our car, in the supermarket, at home, at school, at work, you know, on the bus, wherever we are. We're exposed to plastic pretty much in every single thing that we're doing. So like the amount of plastic that we, you know, it's actually low dose exposure in these little bits, and, you know, sipping through a plastic lid, or drinking from a plastic bottle, or even breathing in tire dust. So it's all of this low dose exposure. Yeah, it's the one thing that we all have in common across the globe. Like, we're all ingesting this plastic material, and it's impacting us. It's changing us. Even Priggy in Indonesia, he was a river scientist, and he was studying this river, and the Brontes River, which, you know, millions of people rely on to drink and to irrigate their crops and to wash their clothes and their bodies. And he had to get into plastics because the fish in the river were intersexed. So the sex of the fish was being altered because of the plastic that was being thrown into the river. So I don't know if it's the straw that broke the camel's back. I think that the back of the camel is just going to be forever altered. I don't think we're it's like these slow changes on across the entire board. It's such a massive problem for us, because it's across so many industries, that we're really going to have to take a staunch, austere stance against plastic. And that's where this science comes in so handy, because we actually have evidence to point to influence that sort of hardcore policy.
Mm. Yeah, it is a little bit sobering, and I do think that, you know, it's already changing the conversation. I think in the last few years, since we really started to unpack the sources of micro and nanoplastic pollution, and this sort of plastic cloud that we all live amongst, even those of us that try so ardently to avoid single-use plastic. You know, you go into an office or a school or a car that has synthetic textiles or carpet or curtains or, you know, bed sheets, then, you know, you cannot avoid it. So yeah. Anyway, let's go back into some
That's
more
when being a
fun
magical
stuff.
mermaid helps.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when you
I
need
think
the
everyone
humor.
listening in is just going, "Wow, Kate is actually extra special that she can be so buoyant and enthusiastic about her work when she knows so much about it."
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah, it
just,
helps.
I guess, come back to the sort of the setting right now. It's Plastic Free July, but it's also 2020, so we have that to deal with. But what are sort of some of the things about Plastic Free July that you'd like to share with people tuning in, or people just in general, depending upon where they're at with their little journey? Tell them some hints and tips and sentiment.
Yeah, I think that, you know, people psych themselves out a lot before they even get started. So I think that July is less about like a contest against yourself to see if you can succeed, because it's all about failure. You know, plastic is everything. You fail in every day. So it's not about being fully plastic free. It's about being plastic aware. It's like your comment about the beach clean. You know, you do a beach clean to kind of really understand the impact of trash on our beaches and in our oceans. You know, you clean a beach for 2 hours, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never using plastic again. I can't believe how much it is. You know, it's everywhere. With Plastic Free July is the same thing. It's like a beach clean for your life. You're just auditing the trash, you know, you're auditing the plastic that you use. It's just turning on, you know, you're just putting on plastic glasses and you're seeing the plastic matrix in your own life. I think so that's little pep talk is to take the pressure off. This is not about shame or guilt. It's about awareness and just tuning in. So I think a good thing to do is to do a trash audit. So that's where you just hold on to all of the trash that you get in a week. Keep it in a big bin, all the sauce packets is a lot now because of COVID and everyone's getting a lot of takeaway food. And depending on where you live, you maybe have to wear a new mask and new gloves every day. So keep all of that. And then at the end of the week, you go through it, you go through your Tetra Packs for your plant milks, and you go through your takeaway to go food and containers, and you go through your shampoo bottles, and you're like, wow, this is all the trash that I create that's being shipped off to Pergis River over in Indonesia, So then you can audit yourself and you can say, all right, well, what can I change? What can I do differently? Hey, maybe I'll check out Mermaid's recipe for shampoo. Or maybe I can check out how to make my own plant milks instead of buying these plastic packaged milks. So then you kind of get a really good look at the sort of plastics that you're using, and you can make a strategy and a plan around what you're going to phase out. And there might be some things that you just can't phase out. You don't know what to use instead. And that's fine. We're all doing our best. So I think taking the pressure off, doing a trash audit so you know what you're working with, and then just going for it, going hard and not being afraid to get experimental and resourceful. So yeah, try some weird recipes and see if they work for you. And then if you're out and about and you forget your reusable cup, try and get resourceful. What can you use instead? Is there a bottle in the back of your car, or is there something else you can use? Or is it just an opportunity to go without and feel what that feels like? Make a little sacrifice for the planet, for something bigger than yourself, or for that craving in that moment. So yeah, it's a beautiful exercise, Plastic Free July. I encourage everyone to try it.
I love that so much of sort of what you're referring to there is it's a bit of human innovation. Like we're going through a bit of an innovation phase in ourselves into this this new way of looking at things. But maybe we'll just round out the conversation today, knowing that Ocean Impact Organisation is charged with supporting innovation and new disruptive ways of doing business that can be regenerative and of positive impact to the ocean. So is there anything that comes up when you think about innovation? Is there any things that you've seen, be they innovations in the way products are delivered or provided, or new exciting materials? What are your attitudes towards, I suppose, how we innovate ourselves out of this this situation?
Yeah, great question, and love your work. So excited to see the projects and the things that you guys are working on. It's amazing. I'm super excited about reuse and refill. I think it's so simple. I think that's that's one of the beauties of this whole movement, is just going back to how we used to do things. And I don't think that that's a step in the wrong direction. I think we should be kind of walking in circles. That's the whole point, is making things circular. So I love refill shops. I love the reuse revolution, bringing our own and normalizing that. It's up to us to normalize these new social norms around bringing our own containers and bringing our containers to be refilled, and letting that not be so weird, So I'm interested in behavior science, and I'm interested in social change, and that's the kind of activism that I participate in. Is how can we create this new narrative around reuse and make it less weird and more normal? So that's something, that's some innovation that I'm interested in and invested in personally. I'm also really excited about innovation in just business models. Like how are business models going to change and adjust as we see that these global monopolies and multinational corporations are not, they're killing us. They're the ones responsible for the pollution. So how are we able to support these businesses and support these entrepreneurs? I'm really interested in the different business models that are coming out of this. We're seeing in COVID, even like local farmers are thriving. The people that already know how to grow their own food, they're the ones who are like self-sufficient. They're like, woo, like we're killing it over here. Chickens.
Who said you can't print your own money? Just grow your own food.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wow, self-sufficiency. What a concept, instead of, relying on everyone else to do everything for us. I mean, that's the concept of the blue zones, right? You just do everything yourself. You clean your house, you grow your own food, you live longer, you live happier. So yeah, I'm interested in these new business models that we can support the local, like really supporting local. And then of course I'm watching the science. I love to see what my chemist friends are up to and what they're interested in and what they're supporting. I mean, I love everything that's happening with seaweed, you know, whether it's regenerative seaweed farming in the oceans and capturing carbon, whether what we can use for seaweed as a protein source, you know, to help feed the world, or making it into a truly biodegradable, compostable, backyard compostable, edible plastic. So that's stuff that I'm definitely watching. And really excited to be a part of that as well. It's a joy to be advising some of these companies and helping spread the word on some of this innovation. It's an exciting time.
It is an exciting time, and you're clearly contributing in so many ways to the kind of future that everyone tuning in today, I'm sure, believes in and wants to see happen as quickly as possible. I'm going to leave it to you, Kate, to share anything you wanted to talk about today that we didn't discuss, and some closing words and where people can find out more information about you.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I guess get a copy of the book. It's available. Just launched in US. Super proud of it. It's beautiful. And I'm doing a course. It's called Plastics Awakening in August. It's a 5-week course, and it's just to support people who want to quit plastics, who want to connect back to nature, who want to connect to this sense of sovereignty. So it's about empowerment. It's inspiration. It's activism. So that's on my website at iquitplastics.com, and it'll be really beautiful. We'll do calls and connect in together to just support each other through this really interesting time. And yeah, just take back our sovereignty to make change within our personal lives so that we're resilient activists for the planet. So I'm excited about that. And then just follow me on Instagram, Plastic Free Mermaid. I'm putting heaps of useful tips every single day of July. So just sharing my lifestyle, how I do it, how I live plastic free every day at Plastic Free Mermaid, Instagram as well as YouTube. So yeah, just let's get social. Follow me on those and chat, ask any questions that you have. I'd love to talk about plastics.
I love
So
it,
yeah,
Kate.
thank you for having me.
Honestly,
What a pleasure.
oh, thank you, Kate. You're an absolute superstar, and we're so lucky to have you. Keep doing your best work, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. It's so great to see you, and well done to you as well. Love your work.
Thanks. See ya. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.